am Halli Casser-Jayne, and welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, where along with my partner in politics, veteran White House correspondent Matthew Cooper, we slice and dice all things politics, and some days, Donald Trump, too. Before we begin, Matt and I want to thank you for your loyalty to our podcast. We appreciate your support, and so do our advertisers. Now, on this episode of the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, we begin with a revelation, much to the dismay of Republicans, that no, Joe Biden does not suffer from dementia, and end with a conversation with best-selling author and critically acclaimed journalist Ellis Cose, here to talk about his provocative new book, The Short Life and Curious Death of Free Speech in America. But up first, it's Matt and Halli. Here we go. Welcome, my friends. Here's where we are this week. We've reached yet another milestone, our weekly event. There are more than 6.7 million cases of COVID-19 in the United States, more than 198,000 dead, just shy of that dark 200,000 deaths milestone they promised we would never get to. And the outbreaks are continuing to spread via classrooms, barrooms, and via Trump and MAGA super spreader rallies. And as we go to recording, there are 45 days, 15 hours, 55 minutes, Matt, 43 seconds until election 2020.
Of course, voting starts early everywhere, so.
Oh my God. Are we in the white knuckle stage? I think we're pretty close. Anyway, good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning.
We're in the hot heat.
This is it. And as you said, early voting started today in Virginia. And, but I got to give you this one from Florida. You ready? This was just leaked out this morning. More than 35,000 mail-in ballots were rejected in the Florida primary, which was 1.5% of the total votes. 65% arrived after the deadline. Signature match problems were the rest. Now, in 2016, Trump won by 113,000 votes in Florida. So you do the math, Mr. Matthew, because you know it's not my strong suit. I hope Biden has a lot of good lawyers.
You know, you had a governor's race decided by less than that, and that's a significant number of ballots.
It's worrisome. Now, I know that Biden announced that they were going to, have this just huge coterie of lawyers. Tell me this, if you know, because I couldn't find out. Are lawyers allowed to go in as they count, or do they have to wait till afterwards? You know?
Well, they can go in as proxies of the parties.
As observers, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, they're Democrat, in most places they're kind of Democrat and Republican officials at the count. So, lawyers can be there for that. But any problems they have, they would have to bring up afterwards as lawsuits, I would assume. But this is going to be dicey. I don't see how you do this without having lawyers right there taking notes and doing whatever, particularly in Florida. By the way. Yeah, exactly. I mean, anyone with memories of the 2000 recount that decided the presidency, absolutely. I mean, I just think of the whole country as Florida 2000.
Yeah, that's pretty scary stuff. Let's go to Biden last night, the town hall. Did you watch it?
I watched the excerpts.
Yeah, what'd you think?
So I thought he was pretty good. I mean, I think his kind of, I guess the thing that got the most attention from what I could tell was the, your white privilege question, which I thought was pretty good, pretty well handled.
Brilliantly handled, I thought.
Yeah. I mean, a little disingenuous, like he said, people say we shouldn't have an Ivy League, we have to have an Ivy League president. That's not quite what they were saying, but in any event.
I thought his bringing the populism and wrenching it from Trump.
He took the populism from Trump. He did the, he touched on race. He kind of put everyone together. It was, I thought, pretty effective with a little demagoguery, but that's an election.
Well, that's politics.
That's politics.
Exactly. It's exactly what we expect. I thought he did very, very well, and he is good at retail politics. I mean, he looks at people, he knows where they're coming from.
He took his vitamins. He was peppy, and Trump looked weird at his. He always looks weird, but he looked at his.
You said it at the same time.
At his Stalinist patriotic education. No.
speech during the day where he's clutching the podium with both hands.
That was bizarre. But
It
before
sounds like
we,
he's on Thorazine. I mean, it was.
He never is the same person twice, Matt. What is that? Do you notice that? He's one. His voice changes.
That's a good point. You make a good point because he's.
You don't know who you're going to get. It's almost like there's another Trump. That speech, by the way, that you're talking about was written, by who? The crazy man. What's his name? I always forget his name because he's so.
Stephen Miller.
Stephen Miller. I mean, he has a certain tone to his speeches that are so dark and so.
Right. No. Santa Monica Goebbels is a terrible writer. He's the worst. I kid. He's not. But he's the worst writer. It's so leaden.
He just scares me.
It's totally everything's overwritten.
He's overwrought. I mean, he's overwrought.
And I'm a little sympathetic to Trump on that stuff. But
why?
Well, just because I do think there is a critique of critical race theory and 1619, some other things. I don't think the feds need to get into education, but we're going to talk about that because hold that one off because I really want to talk about that because I think that's key to a lot of what's going on around us right now. I want to say one more thing about the voting. Okay. Yeah. North Carolina already is rejecting black voters' mail-in ballots more than whites, according to 538. This is serious stuff. This is crazy stuff. Trump is pushing this. Look. The voters aren't buying it, by the way. At least everything that I've read, every poll, they're going to vote by mail if they can, Republicans or Democrats. The whole thing is just wacky, but for the fact that shenanigans are going on inside of these election things. So I just wanted to go back to that because I think that's going to be the topic of conversation in November. But I also wanted to agreed.
Yeah, agreed. I know you do. About Biden and his dementia,
or lack thereof. Yeah,
I think we really ought to make mention of that because it surely was not on display last night or anywhere.
No, he does not have dementia.
And it was very interesting to me to see how the Republicans, played that. Because, they what were they going to do there? They were saying he had dementia. Now they're saying he was given the questions ahead of time.
Right. Well, this happened at the convention, too. Right. They keep saying he's demented. And then he comes out and he's pretty good.
Yeah. The only thing that I would say that I think is, I'm hyper watching this stuff. I did not see Trump's the day before or a couple of days before that. I'll admit that, but because I can't watch him anymore for that, I just can't. It just makes me nuts. He is a little. I'm going to use this word in quotes, frail. So they have to be careful with him because he's not steady on his feet when he's standing.
You mean Trump?
No,
we're talking about Trump.
No, Biden.
Not steady.
He's not steady. In other words. They kept him standing, which was smart. I understood why they did that. They wanted to make sure that everybody knew he could stand up for an hour. But he's a little frail in the walking. So they got to keep him from walking. Not when he's walking, when he gets a good start, kind of like the Energizer Bunny. Then he's got and he can run and he can do all that. But when he was standing and he was walking across stage, he looks a little bit frail. And that's not good. So I just wanted to... I wanted to run that by you and see what you said. Some things happened that were interesting this week. One of them was Bloomberg, $100 million into Florida. $100 million is a lot of friggin' money. Yeah. But Sheldon Adelson, and I couldn't verify this, by the way, there was a report he was coughing up $25 million. And I know they're at war with each other, so that didn't sound right to me. Did you hear anything about that?
Well, I did hear about that. I mean, I think he got it bad in the end, despite any reported, feuding between the casino owner and Trump, that he's going to cough up a lot. It's just who he is, right?
Yeah. He still won't have the edge, Trump, because he's got no money in the can.
Won't have the money edge.
Yeah, right. He doesn't have the money edge. That said, and I'm bouncing around today because I have so many notes that I took. I'm going to make you crazy here, going from place to place to place. This morning, Trump announced an $11.6 billion package for Puerto Rico.
Did you see that? The White House is expected to announce it today. This was after 3 years after Trump tossed paper towels to survivors of Hurricane Maria. Now, here's the story, though, to me, Matt. Schumer went along with it. The fight right now in Florida is with the Puerto Rican vote.
Right.
You wonder about these Democrats sometimes. I mean, you know.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up is the fact that Orlando, folks, which is where Disneyland is, or Disney World, whatever they're calling it down here, is a very changing community. It's sort of in the middle of the state. It's not on either coast. And it is, it's Disneyland.
Right.
And you got to see what the place, it really is. The houses, everything looks like a movie set that they're building. But it also is a new Democratic stronghold. And this is what has Trump freaked out. I did a little investigation into all of this. Where are they really concerned about? It's South Florida is one issue, but the big issue that could actually throw South Florida
has always been the issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
go ahead.
But it's definitely the demographics are shifting in the Democrats' favor.
And it's Puerto Rico.
Since 2016, you've had a huge number of Puerto Ricans come in who are Democratic leaning.
Right.
So the Hispanic composition of the state has changed. That pivotal region of the state is changed a lot. It's, everything's gotten a little better for Democrats since then, but, everybody's still got to fight for it.
Yeah, they're going to have to fight for it, but it is what everybody is concerned about, whether they're writing about it, they're not writing about it. That's the story down here. Yeah, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say Trump has, really hurt his lead with seniors. I mean, what should have been a natural advantage built in with seniors, he's not doing.
Right, and it's going to get, it's only going to get worse.
It's only going to get worse. I mean, he's inched away from his Social Security pledge. All the sort of let grandma die talk has not been good.
Oh, Jesus.
And Biden, they're a little more comfortable with Biden,
Yeah, well, I think, and because of COVID, which we're going to talk about in a minute, that's going to be a big problem for him coming close to November. I want to talk about Trump turning on Harris into a campaign issue, and in my opinion, where they may be helping him. Last night, Trump said that this is not what America wants if she comes in through the back door. Speaking of African, Asian, American.
Yeah, right.
And the day before is wait till you see what Pence does to her. This is not a good thing. And they need to nip this one in the bud before it even gets started, because it's where the energy is going to go. If they can't get Biden, they're going to go for her. Here's where I think they not only do they need to work, nip this in the bud quickly, but she's doing something, and you'll forgive me for this, because you may think this is a strange thing for me to say, but I'm going to say it. Her clothes. They've got to be careful about her clothes, because they have her coming off of planes, with her boots, her shit kitten boots, if you will, and, kind of casual, not looking vice presidential. And on the one hand, that appeals to a certain crowd, which I know that they want, which is the young black voter. So she's hip and she's cool. But it's very off-putting to that conservative in the middle, not quite over their own inner, black thing. So I thought I'd bring that up. I don't know if that crossed your mind at all, or if it was something that you saw, but it's definitely different than any other vice presidential candidate has ever appeared.
Right. Well, she wore the boots because she's going into the fire zone.
Well, she wears her sneakers and her jeans and her green. It's not just when she was going to California.
Well, okay, but I mean, in general, she's just like a politician.
In fact, she was coming down to Miami.
Pantsuit.
No.
Pantsuits.
Well, I don't like pantsuits either, so I'm really big on the clothes issue.
You don't like women politicians in America.
No, I love them. No, I'm just simply saying, when she came to Florida, she got off the plane looking,
Okay, well, right. Well, I agree. Those things can resonate, and women get, much more scrutinized than men do.
And they shouldn't. But they do.
They should. No, that's fair enough.
So I'm just telling you, I know where they're going. If you watch how they're doing this game.
No, they're going to try to make her into like a gangbanger.
Exactly. That's that's my point.
I mean, we know what they'll try to do.
Right.
But I don't think she's going to give them that much rope. I mean,
I hope not.
I agree that, okay, maybe, sure, no semblance, but I think in general, look, someone said on Twitter the other day, it was I can't remember, I think it was an African-American reporter, but he was saying, like, if you're an African-American politician who went statewide, you're good at white people. In other words, you're good, you're okay at reassuring that you can handle this.
What?
And I think she'll be okay at that. But Pence is a good debater. I think just leaving all the kind of race stuff out of it. Pence did. A lot of people thought Kane would take Pence to the cleaners.
I never thought so. Did you?
And I never thought Kane was that great.
Kane, I never even understood the pick, by the way, but that's another story.
Well, I got that part of it, but he was. Pence was good. Pence is very steady in that. He doesn't seem like a nut job.
I think he absolutely seems like a nut job, actually.
Well,
but,
in that forum.
Look, he's very good at his earnestness, his, kind of, measured delivery, and, I'm a certain assuredness about him, and, so don't mess with me and all of that kind of stuff. But he's so off-putting because he's such a friggin' phony. And it is.
No, he's the opposite of
everything that he presents. Exactly.
Yeah, there's nothing about it.
Yeah.
Makes you want to get a non-alcoholic beer with him.
You're in rare
we digress.
Okay. Oh my God. Olivia Troye, Republican on Pence virus team.
Right.
Comes out for Biden. It was all about the election. And apparently, according to Anthony Scaramucci, the Mooch, she's just the beginning of what is going to be quite extraordinary in the next few weeks. And he even went so far as to say Anonymous is going to come out.
Okay.
Did these things have any weight?
Maybe, probably not tons. Once you've had a couple of them, it's hard to see how many more you need. I mean, when his national security advisor writes a 700-page book saying he's a lunatic, and that feels like old news. I don't know what each new thing gets you, but it can't. It's not good for Trump.
Well, it's never good.
I think
but
this one is bad because he's pissing on his supporters in her rendition of what happened. That he's like calling his own people disgusting.
Well, he did that the week before too, and the week before that.
Yeah, so that's a good twist on it for Democrats because it's not just some Republican saying I worked with the president and he's weird.
Yeah.
It's them saying like, no, actually he hates all these MAGA people. He thinks they're suckers.
I just, it's so awful. So there's that part of it. It's just, oh my God, a president of the United States is just this, horrible human being. I mean, just, gee willikers, how did you get there? I mean, there is that to it. And the other side is just, why are these people, did they wait so long to come out? This will be the story of history, because if they had all come out at the time all of this stuff was going on, we never would have fallen to where we have fallen with all of this. I just keep going back to that, Matt. And they all, and I always say this, I tweet this all the time. Each one of them have such huge egos that they think they're the one who's going to go in there and change Trump and fix it.
Right.
And then, and then they don't. And really, you guys don't wait. Just get out. All of you come together, blow the lid off of this guy, and let's get on with it. But that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that be nice if it did?
Yeah. Well, the lid is. I mean, the lid's off. I mean.
Well, as a friend of mine said to me yesterday, and I thought this was, if Trump is pushing 41 at this point, maybe 40, 41. There's still 100. That's only 40% of 100%.
Yeah.
So it's not as bad.
No, that's the, when you see all these polls, that's the thing you want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, because
is
it's not
approval
as bad.
Or what's the number he's getting in the head-to-head, and those, he's really in the 40s and low 40s. And, there's no third parties this time. So he's really, I'm not saying he can't win. He can't, but he's not in good shape.
No. But he's not finished, and you never know what he's got. He's going to pull out of the hat of it. Yeah, I mean, I do too. Any more fallout from the Woodward book? There was a hell of an interview yesterday. You might have seen that I posted on Twitter about with Dana Perina. Was on Fox, and gosh, as an interviewer, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard for me when I watch people trying to push people to the answers that they want.
Right.
That just makes me nuts. And that's what she tried to do. And I think it was Media ran the piece right away and, said it was a real blow-up interview, which if you went back and watched the tape, it wasn't at all. But it is about what is going on here, and it's so symbolic of the mistakes the media is playing. And it's just not only the right-wing media, because the left-wing media does it too. I mean, if you're going to go in and you're going to do an interview, Matt, with somebody, and you're a pro-Biden person, I am, you make it really clear up front, your position. But you don't try and force an answer out of somebody to meet your expectations, which is where you cross the line. And that's what she did yesterday. And that's what Fox keeps doing. And it's really inappropriate. And it's really wrong. Damn, Woodward has that very deliberate talking thing.
Sure. That's his MO, yeah.
And he's very slow with his strong Midwestern A's.
Right.
He wasn't taking one piece of crap from her. I loved it. I loved it. So and he stuck to his guns. He just stuck to his guns.
You're not going to push Bob Woodward around.
No. It's interesting to me. Did you read the book, or have you gotten the book? It's beautifully written, by the way. But
no, I haven't read it yet.
Okay, read it. You can't read them all. This one's worth the read.
Yeah.
Just the opening when he's talking about ExxonMobil guy and Madison. Oh my gosh, just nothing to do with even Trump at that point, really, in a way. Really gives you an insight into both of those men and how things turned out. It's brilliantly written. But it is interesting at the end of the book, he says this is the wrong man at the wrong time. And really takes a position on Trump. She's never done in any book before. And doesn't that tell you it all?
Yes.
Right?
He's been so scrupulous about that his saying what seems obvious to so many that Trump's not the right guy for the job,
right,
is itself kind of groundbreaking. Yeah, well, look, I thought it's it's not been good for Trump. I did watch the 60 Minutes.
It was brilliant
airing, which is probably the most single Woodward related thing that'll get the most attention because the show's big ratings and. Especially coming after football. And, look, the idea that Trump knew of how deadly things were with the virus and didn't really convey that to the rest of us was, not good.
We'll talk about not good in a minute. Indoctrinate your children. Trump announces 1776 plan saying the left has warped, distorted, and defiled the American story with deceptions, falsehoods, and lies. Shade out of Hitler or what?
Well, yeah, I think anyone who's seen totalitarian regimes or the Soviet use of the Great Patriotic War, using World War II as a propaganda tool for decades afterwards, we'll see a lot of echoes of that here. I mean, look, really, the federal government is always eschewed getting into the minutia of school curriculums. That's up to the states and municipalities and counties. And, he thinks he sees an opening here. He doesn't know what any of this stuff is. What are the odds that he's read the 1619 Project? What are the odds?
What are the odds he even knew about it until what's-his-face gave him the copy to read?
Destroy America. I mean, there was that crazy speech that Miller and company wrote for him in South Dakota, where it was like, 2 minutes to midnight, and the re-education camps were about to open. And,
but
he sees an opening here. I mean, my only point earlier was that there's a very legitimate critique of some of what's being taught and how it's being taught, but this is nutty stuff that he's doing.
He's scraping the bottom of the barrel for votes, sweetie. That's what this is all about.
Absolutely, and I think I don't think he's. I think there may be some votes there to kind of scrape or at least stir up your own people a little more, but it's
not enough to put him over the line. And
this is not how you're going to get
right.
Yeah, it's not how you're going to get reelected.
And you
can get reelected taking on the New York Times.
And what's really interesting is anybody else would measure their thinking in this. If I say this, who am I going to alienate versus who am I going to get? And he does none of that. He has been on one focus all of the time that he's, been in office, and it's his 40%.
No, it's unbelievable considering he wasn't really conservative, and it's just amazing how he's all in.
And I'll go back to not being conservative as soon as he's out of office too. You can bet your bottom dollar, unless he sees a reason. Unless he sees a reason to build a new, OAC or whatever that thing is called, the OAN. And to buy that out and make that into a super duper right wing thing. But I think he's going to go to sleep when this is all over myself. That's my theory on him.
That would be my guess.
But we're talking about indoctrinating children. And can I just throw out very quickly here the story of the possibility that in some of these prison camps of people coming across the border who are being held, there appears to be a problem with conducting, ripping out the women's insides.
Yeah, hysterectomies, right?
There are no words. There are no words.
Yeah, it's a horrible report from it started with a nurse who had said that, a doctor had been contracted, by the feds, was doing unnecessary and unrequested hysterectomies, and she said she'd seen this. The doctors denied it, and it's getting investigated, and, I mean, look, if that's not enough to get the right-wingers upset, because remember, it was like a year or so ago, they was upset that they weren't letting, some of the detainees get abortions. They were trying to make them have babies.
For the party that's pro-life, they ain't pro-life.
Well, I have seen some pro-lifers, online at least, very upset about this. So I don't think anyone's been in.
I'm just surprised this didn't go to the top of the heap, by the way, on stories, because this really is America at its absolute worst. If this turns out to be true, I don't think there's anything, other than locking the people up when they did, which is the same story.
I agree, and I think it's one that you would think the White House would want to get out front of and just,
Well, I'm just surprised that the Democrats haven't, but the Democrats are keeping it so close to the hip at this point. They're doing nothing to raise anybody's ire, but we're going to talk about that in a second. I just want to bring up Lindsey Graham tied with Jamie Harrison. That's pretty extraordinary. Yeah. Collins is down in one poll 12 and another just 5, but I don't care about her because I think she's going. But this Graham thing really is a story, if this is true. My favorite thing all week was when Lindsey said, "Show us your tax returns." Oh, the irony.
Yes.
And Jamie said, "Okay." And did.
Really don't.
Yeah, that was pretty, oh my gosh. Yay. Yay. But wouldn't that be, I doubt he'll pull it off, do you? Jamie Harrison?
Probably not. Such a Republican state, tough, Trump will win by a lot. And, you never know. I mean, this guy, he's run a very good race against Graham, and Graham is not as sure-footed as he once was, so.
And he's not only not sure-footed, that's because he's wearing high heels all the time these days, but.
Stop. You know, I don't go there with that stuff.
I know, but I couldn't help it.
But also, fourth term, I mean, after 18 years, I think you always have to. That's the time in your career when politicians do get vulnerable, just naturally.
Well, he keeps attaching himself to Trump. I want to see whether Trump goes down and tries to save him, because I think that'll be fascinating as well.
It's not just attaching himself to Trump. It's the fact that he was so
right,
and then so suck-uppy to Trump. It's too much. It strains.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I like I said, I can't wait to see how this one plays out, because I think it's fascinating.
You were listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts weekly at hallicasserjayne.com and is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to find us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, on all your favorite apps. You can find the Halli Casser-Jayne Show on your Alexa device too. Just say, The Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Oh, and come play with me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show.
Let's go to the CDC. Testing guidance was published against scientists' objections. Well, the whole coronavirus thing, COVID-19 thing has, of course, this week has just been, from Bob Woodward to everybody else coming out. Redfield, we're going to talk about him in a minute, but we really are getting snookered on what happened to the CDC. This Redfield guy goes on TV yesterday or the day before and says what? Masks are better than even vaccines. 5 minutes later, Trump is out there screaming like a banshee, he didn't really mean that. He misunderstood both questions and yada, yada, yada. Okay, whatever. And Redfield, of course, caves. Honest to God, Matt, this is sad. This is sad, particularly when we see what's happening with COVID, which is on the rise. 17% worth, by the way, according to FEMA unpublished document.
Oh, yeah. Look, this is awful business. New York Times has this story about how they put up bad advice on the website because of the CDC, because of the hacks back in Washington. There's a story about how the post office was planning to mail masks to everyone in America, but they put the kibosh on that. I mean,
It really is pretty, oh my gosh. Followed up with the story that the post office had been all set to send out 5 cloth masks to every person via the USPS.
Exactly.
And the White House pulled it. Explain it. Can you explain it? Because I think that's the conversation. The conversation becomes, what are these guys really up to on this COVID thing, Matt? People are dying in droves, and we know what's coming in the next couple of months. And I say to myself, this can't just be about getting reelected. You think about that whole thing with, the Manchurian candidate, and you start to say, why do they want to kill so many Americans?
Well, I'm not sure I'm there on that, but
you can see why it's a question that's fairly asked. It is bizarre what's going on here.
I agree.
How do you like that? That's mean to throw that one to you. No, I'm sorry.
Meanwhile, if you're in Tokyo, you can ride the subways and go to dinner. It's all normal and crowded and urban. And
yeah, I'm just saying
so
this. Here. No, and the thing is, even after Woodward book comes out. God, I can't even talk this morning. Trump then goes and does indoor, stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, so come on, what's going on here? I'm sorry, this is just like apocalyptic crazy. I mean, maybe he's really bought into this whole end of the world thing.
Well, I wouldn't. It doesn't seem religious.
There's got to be an explanation for this, and you're not going to tell me. It's a little
more. Yeah, I don't have it, so I mean, it has become this sort of
all right, I'll bail you out of that. I don't want to let this just be a throwaway. FEMA, absolutely, 17% rise in virus deaths in the last week or so, and I want to, and it's unpublished, by the way. I want to bring it up only because of the numbers again in Florida are so bizarre. This DeSantis really is evil as they come.
if you look at the graph is a complete downhill from the time that they changed, who was going to do the reporting of all of this. But I got to say this. So a couple of days ago, the amount of deaths in the state was 36 or something like that. Now it's back to where it is. It's up in the 150, 200 a day, which does not compute with the amount of cases that they're saying a day. But of course, they're not testing either. And this is happening all over the country. So of course, we're never really going to know until he's out of office and people can really go in and start, doing some real scavenging to find out what's going on. But we need to know this. We need to know that you can't trust what the United States government is saying.
Right.
Because you can't. And when you have him dealing with some of the lunatics that he's got in there, and Fauci and Birx are relegated to the cheapskates. We're in Yikesville. That's all I have to say. We're in Yikesville. That's it. And then you got Jared Kushner, by the way, who we're going to talk about in terms of Israel in a second. But there's this reporting of him sitting there like a cold-hearted, SS officer. It's not our problem, the COVID. It's, let the states take care of it.
Yeah, right.
Right. Just as cold and calculated as can possibly be. This, by the way, and we're talking COVID, let's just talk because Europe is usually ahead of us in what's coming next. And France is just about worse than it was the first time around. They're in their second phase, apparently. I was talking to the UK yesterday. It's a mess. A mess.
Yes.
All of Europe. Germany is starting to skyrocket again. And what they're like usually about 2 or 3 weeks before we are. And, if you need toilet paper, folks, I'm telling you, go out and buy it because you're not going to be able to leave your houses in a couple of weeks. That's how bad it's going to get here. I am telling everybody right now. And you may not know it because they may not tell you the numbers.
Right, that's the thing.
That's the really scary part of this whole story. It's like whatever. Speaking of COVID, you want to explain to me the stimulus package and the fact that they can't seem to get anything done? Because I can't figure this out. I can't figure this out from Nancy's point of view or from Trump's. Trump actually said, I want more money, even though the Republicans said no.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, it wasn't flawless, but the stimulus packages did keep a lot of people out of the poorhouse earlier this year. And, some programs are very close to running out of money.
Well, Florida just shut down the extra $300 or $400 on unemployment insurance. They don't have the money. State's broke. Right. State is broke. That's right. This is what all of them. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. New Jersey imposed a millionaire tax. I mean, God bless them.
So why aren't the Democrats taking half a loaf instead of?
I don't think they need to take half a loaf, but they could take some loaf. Nancy seems very.
Some loaf.
Yeah, Nancy is seeming, just I'm not going to give in on this, and that's the bottom line. We'd like to give her, she's endured for so long because she knows what she's doing. That yikes.
Yeah, I think you raise a fair point.
People are hurting.
Maybe you just get it done.
Yeah. I'm cleaning up the picture right now. Another woman accused Trump of assault at a tennis match. And what we heard about that was bupkis because it's okay for him to assault anybody. Nobody gives a hoot anymore about assault. It's just assault. You got anything on that?
I think we've heard. I mean, I don't think he's not. Yeah, but it's no longer like an Access Hollywood, campaign stopping.
You heard it, and it's
just like, it's another woman.
Yeah, right. Yeah, except there were a whole bunch of them, and isn't that extraordinary?
It's totally his MO. I mean, it was like exactly the way other women described it.
Right. Yeah. There's a certain style to it all. They're trying to revive Hunter Biden. I just wanted to throw that out there. We'll pick that up again next week when I think you'll see a little bit more movement on that. I want to talk about Jerry Falwell very briefly with you because remember I said he was a drunk and you got mad at me. Well, apparently there's a call that says he was drunk. I just wanted to do I told you so.
Okay.
I don't do that often, but
He was definitely slurring his words.
You know me. I don't like to.
I know you're
overly cautious with the people.
I love it, and that's why you're here. But he was caught, and he definitely had a drinking problem. And that's what's going to save him. They're going to put him in rehab and say he was drunk and he didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah, there's his lifeline. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, most people when they're drunk, they don't want to see their spouses with the pool boy. I mean, this is like what Mel Gibson said. Like, oh, I was drunk. It's like, well, yeah. I mean, most people when they're drunk don't like go on anti-Semitic type.
Oh my God! Military police considered using controversial heat ray that day when Trump appeared with the Bible and ran the protesters.
Yes, I was unaware of the heat ray at all.
Me too, but boy, you learn something new every day, and that's a pretty damn scary kind of thing to think about. Yikes. These are all things that I wish we had more time for. I think that they deserve mention, but, we don't have the time for it. I just want to tell you that while Rome burns, by the way, Marco Rubio and Mr. Scott, our illustrious senators from the state, are pushing legislation to keep daylight savings time going because that's the most important thing that they can do when people in Florida are getting booted the hell out of their houses because they don't have. Isn't that just a wonderful, 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 wonderful thing?
You see, they got your best interest.
I tell you, the two of them are really.
It's all working out.
Oh boy! Oh boy. Okay, Israel and Bahrain and the other Arab countries who've signed on to this peace deal when they're not at war, so it's not a peace deal. Actually, it's the Iran deal, if you ask me, and it's the way that nobody in the media has covered it correctly, because this has nothing to do with Israel and its relationship to the Arabs, and everything to do with them all going up against as a one group against Iran, and so it's not even been handled properly. It's not even because I don't know, reporters just don't have the facts on the ground anymore.
Right. Well, whatever's pushing them together, it is interesting.
I've always said the significance is really Saudi Arabia. But they just sold Saudi Arabia, or trying to sell Saudi Arabia, all the planes that they've wanted for 100 years. And I know Congress is kind of like going, what? And that's what's holding up that end of the deal. You can never look at all of this as one thing. But I'm going to say something else that's going to shock you. Or not. And that is...
I'm ready.
Well, rather than Trump getting any accolades for this, because I don't think he really deserved them, I do think Bibi Netanyahu does. This man has never wavered and has never given in and has fought for Israel, whether you like him or you don't, you like his tactics or his motives or whatever. He has stood his ground and he won. He manipulated the thing on Iran and the Iran deal, which I happen to have agreed with him on. But here he is, and he is making peace. And Israel is making peace, if peace is the word we're going to use. So kudos to the hated Bibi Netanyahu, who may wind up in jail.
Right.
As the Jewish people begin the holiest of their weeks, starting with the celebration of the Jewish New Year tonight, I want to wish you a Happy New Year, Matthew. The
Happy New Year.
Thank you, darling. Almost two-thirds.
We'll just give it a little twist there. Halli. Happy New Year.
Halli. Almost two-thirds of millennials, Gen Zs, don't know that 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. America's schools need help. Not Trump help. History help. That's where we ended this week. You got anything to say?
On that sad note, no. I just, maybe we'll have a new Gulf state making peace with Israel by next week.
I'm sure we will, and one every week until the election.
Yeah, come on, Oman.
Happy New Year, darling.
Happy New Year.
Let's have a conversation about free speech. Free speech has long been one of Americans' most revered freedoms. Yet now, more than ever, free speech is reshaping America's social and political landscape, even as it is coming under attack. With us today is best-selling author and critically acclaimed journalist Ellis Cose, who wades into the debate to reveal how our constitutional right to free speech has been co-opted by the wealthy and politically corrupt. In his new book, The Short Life and Curious Death of Free Speech in America, Cose offers an eye-opening, wholly original examination of the state of free speech in America today. It's not a pretty picture. The widely respected journalist, who has been a columnist and contributing editor at Newsweek, the New York Daily News, and USA Today, has never been one to pull punches. And he does not here. Let's talk with Ellis Cose.
Hello, Halli.
Hi, Ellis. I just want to tell you, first of all, you got my blood pressure going, as if there's not enough in life these days. Sending it.
Oh, well, my apologies for doing that.
No. What a great book. What a perfect book for the moment. What we need to talk, and here we are. I'm so glad. Free speech. It wasn't originally part of the Constitution. But can you give us just a brief history? Because I think people
Of course,
don't
I'll be
know
happy.
it.
I'll be
Yeah.
happy to do that. Yeah, I mean, originally the founders and the Constitutional Convention met, as I'm sure you know, in 1787, and they enacted the Constitution without a Bill of Rights after some debate because they didn't think we needed one. Basically, the idea that we as a new country might need protection from our own government that they had created seemed to them a little bit absurd. But prodded by Madison, they decided, maybe there is a point to a Bill of Rights, and so the Bill of Rights was passed, and it was enacted in 1791. So shortly after the Constitution itself, and prominent among them was, of course, the First Amendment, which is the first item in the Bill of Rights, and it guaranteed the right to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, and the freedom to petition the government. The problem is that even though that amendment was passed and it was ratified, is that almost immediately Congress turned around and passed the Alien and Sedition Acts, which basically outlawed speech. And so for the first part of our existence as a country, it was illegal to speak out against the ruling party, which was the Federalist Party back then. And that ended, Thomas Jefferson ended up ending that. But the whole idea that we weren't very serious about free speech took a long time to get out of our national fiber. And the other thing that's worth noting is that the Constitution did not speak in that sense to rights about violation by states or localities at all. So even under the Constitution, states and cities could pass legislation that infringed upon your right to speak, and they did. I mean, throughout the South, for instance, it was against the law to print abolitionist literature. You really could not advocate the end of slavery in the South because you could be arrested or you could be beaten legally, for doing that. And it was not until the 20th century that those things began to change. And one of the reasons that they began to change was because of World War One. And during World War I, we had this period under Wilson of just incredible repression and suppression of speech. Essentially, if you were a critic of the war, you could be arrested and convicted. And thousands of people were, including, I guess, one of my favorite examples is a guy who wasn't even a war critic. He was just some filmmaker who made a film called The Spirit of 76, which was celebrating the Revolutionary War and the U.S. victory in that. He was arrested and convicted because of his criticism of the British in that movie, and the British were then allies, and you couldn't criticize them too harshly back then, because they were allies. So he gets caught up in violations of the law. The entire Industrial Workers Union got caught up in that because they were war critics. And the biggest trial the United States ever saw resulted from the indictment of 166 of their members, over 100 of whom were brought to one trial in Chicago, in a Chicago courtroom, and convicted of violations of the Seditions Amendment to the Espionage Act. And then after World War I
I'm going to cut you off because I think we've got what we need now, because I have so much to talk to you about, and I want to go ahead and I want to say this. First of all, you felt compelled to write a book titled The Short Life and Curious Death of Free Speech in America. So one would think, you would assume from your title, that free speech is dead. Is it? Or are you being hyperbolic? Or where are you on this? And let's keep it short. I got 12 questions. I got 10 minutes. Oh, I'm hysterical.
Okay. Basically, if you're asking, do I think that the First Amendment has been repealed? No. What I mean by that is that the whole spirit of the First Amendment and the whole idea behind free speech is in great peril now, and to some extent is dead, and it's been trumped by money, by corporate speech, by misinformation, by propaganda, by an array of things, that make it very difficult for the voices of people who are not rich, powerful, to be heard these days.
Let me take it to another place, because we use the term free speech, and I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the title of your book, and that's where you want to go. But I also think we're talking about truth, and I'm not sure they're all that different.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
Well, I think they're related.
Okay.
I think that certainly, the ability to speak and the ability to tell the truth are different things, but I think they're very related. And if you look at the rationale behind why we have free speech, and certainly modern evolution of why we have free speech, it has a lot to do with the idea that through speech you get through truth, and through truth you get to a better society. And I think that's where we're falling down now.
So do I. And enter Donald Trump to the conversation.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I call
ahead.
Trump the liar in chief. And the truth is politicians have been lying to Americans as long as the Republic has been around. But he takes this all to a whole new level as far as I'm concerned. And I'm curious as to what your thoughts are there.
Well, we've never seen this before. I mean, as you say, politicians have always lied. But we've never seen it at this level and at this persistence. And aided and abetted the way that it is by technology. And so, yes, you had McCarthyism and McCarthy lying, but he was just one senator, and at the end had limited power. The president has almost unlimited power, and when he decides that he is going to run the country largely on the basis of untruths, that's a crisis. That's a real crisis.
And the thing is, it happened in such a quick period of time.
No, it happened in a very short time, but the seeds were being planted all along, and I think there are big markers. I mean, one big marker was the 2004 campaign, where swift voting became a thing, and when you had a war hero, who was made into a villain and totally, and his record was totally lied about, and a candidacy destroyed as a result of that. So I think we've been, and then it also has to do a lot with the modern evolution of the Republican Party, which has more and more become a sort of fringe party of people with fringe ideas in some ways. And that has had an impact. And so how does he rise? How does Trump rise? He rises on the beginning with a birtherism lie, which was a transparent lie, but which was accepted as truth by a majority of Republicans at the time. And so it's been evolving. But yes, Trump has taken it to a new level, and he has technology of tweets behind him. He has television networks and radio networks behind him. And so he has a propaganda apparatus unlike anything we've ever seen in modern America.
And the scary part of it is, even if he goes, it ain't over, right?
No, this cultural moment is not going to end with the end of the Trump presidency. I think, as I said, it's been building for a while. And I think he is as much a creation of this moment as one who created this moment. I think he's both. He happened to be the ideal person, if that's the right way to describe it, to exploit, the place where we happen to be as a society right now.
You mentioned briefly Twitter, Facebook and Twitter, and we're in this period where we thought, oh, everybody's going to have a voice now. Free speech is dying under a Twitter. Under a Facebook.
Well, I think there were, but then of course, if we go back to Oliver Wendell Holmes, and to Brandeis. I mean, they were very idealistic. Also, they thought that truth was going to win out, and I think people again saw the internet. My goodness, it's open. We're going to have truth. But the internet happens to be married to major commerce and to other kinds of incentives that allow a huge part of it to be devoted to stuff that's anything but the truth. And just as this become a mechanism to spread voices of freedom and voices of truth, it's also a great mechanism for disinformation and even for foreign governments, as we have learned over the last 4 years, to exploit the divisions of the United States. So it's a mixed blessing, and it's difficult to argue, given what we now know, that it's going to be primarily a force for good.
Fascism, nationalism. Listen to me. The right to protest versus the criminalization of protesting. I'm thinking of Black Lives Matter and how he's played with that. That's what we're talking about here. I want people to understand, who don't understand, just how insidious this all is into every aspect of our lives, how our right to free speech is being messed with, for lack of a better term.
Well, it's become something of a political game also, because there were a series of speakers, for instance, a couple of weeks ago at the National Republican Convention, who spoke on and on about free speech and how they were the party of free speech. But they were talking about speech in a very limited way, because this is the same party, you have to keep in mind, that had a president who violently shut down a protest at Lafayette Park, violently shut that down so that he could march through there with a Bible and hold it up in front of a church. So, and someone who has consistently advocated sending in federal troops to break up people who are protesting. So this is not a presidency or party that really believes in free speech. What they were talking about was the speech of a certain number of far right-wing speakers who had been jeered or whatever on campus. And that's a different discussion, but it's an attempt of them to take over the free speech argument. I mean, the president even signed an executive order mandating free speech on campus. It was very narrowly defined, and it basically just was an instance to do propaganda.
It scares me even more, the amount of people who are taken in by all of this. And they don't go away either. Does that worry you?
I think, yeah, but I think it also underscores a problem that we have in our society, which is that we don't really encourage critical thinking. We don't really teach critical thinking. And so we have a bunch of uncritical thinkers who are very gullible and accept these things that are untrue. And the other unfortunate reality is that we are a very polarized society. And so you have people who are invested because they're polarized into believing one side over another side, even if that side is telling them things that are downright lies.
There are a lot of angry Americans, and you know what? It's not just on one side. That's the reality. It's on right, and that's something that's not talked about a whole lot. So here we are. You have this great book, and believe me, guys, it goes into some stuff you want to hear about. Your Citizens United and voter suppression and gerrymandering and that stupid electoral college. Ellis, a lot of people are holding on to the notion, like I said, that if Trump's defeated, it's all going to be right, and it's not. It's going to not be right, not yet. So that said, what can we do? What are you looking for?
What I'm looking for is a bit more common sense and dialogue. What I'm looking for is a bit more attention in our educational apparatus to some of the powers or abilities that will allow people to see the truth beyond this. What I'm hoping for is that we will someday soon get a Supreme Court that has the wisdom to understand that corporations are not people and shouldn't have the same rights that people have. But immediately what I'm hoping for is that the American people will sort of realize that a government that mostly lies to them is not a government that serves them, and that therefore they need to take whatever measures necessary to change that.
I love this book. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Bye-bye.
That's all mine.
I've been speaking with Ellis Cose. His new book is The Short Life and Curious Death of Free Speech in America. For more information on Ellis and his book, visit elliscose.com. Thank you for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a production of Resec LLC. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is available at hallicasserjayne.com and on all your favorite apps. Be sure to visit us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and follow me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show. Until next time, this is Halli Casser-Jayne.